The Copelands have always presented the world with the image of the perfect family, but was it all a lie? After their divorce, Kenneth Copeland finally broke his silence, and what he revealed changed everything. The truth had been hidden for years, but now it was coming out. What was really going on behind closed doors? Stay tuned to find out. For years, Kenneth and Gloria Copeland had been the picture-perfect couple in the Christian community. Their marriage was often held up as an example of unwavering faith, love, and commitment. They traveled the world together, preached together, and built one of the most recognized ministries in the world, Kenneth Copeland Ministries. Their dynamic, both on and off the stage, seemed like a seamless partnership, but recently a growing sense of distance between the Copelands started to raise eyebrows, and the rumors began to swirl. At first, it was subtle. People who had been following the couple for years began to notice small changes in their public appearances. It wasn't anything overt, just little things, like the fact that they started appearing at events separately. At first, no one paid much attention to it. After all, every couple has their moments, and schedules can be busy. But over time, this pattern became more noticeable, and it was impossible to ignore. Fans who had once admired the Copelands for their close-knit relationship started to wonder why they weren't seen together as much. The warmth between them that once radiated when they were on stage began to fade. In earlier years, their shared smiles and easy banter were a hallmark of their relationship, a visible demonstration of their love and shared mission. But as time went on, something changed. The subtle exchanges, small touches, shared glances started to disappear. Their interactions became more professional, even in front of their fans, and that raised questions. Was it just a phase, or was there something deeper going on behind the scenes? Then came the whispers. People began to notice that when Kenneth was asked about Gloria in interviews, his answers became less enthusiastic, almost dismissive. He used to speak so highly of her, his partner in faith, the woman who supported him through every trial and triumph. But now, when asked about her absence at a particular event, Kenneth would simply say it was a scheduling conflict, without the usual warmth or gratitude in his voice. For longtime fans, that vague response felt out of character. Kenneth had always been open about his love for Gloria, so to hear him brush off questions about her was unsettling. The rumors didn't stop there. Fans began to speculate that the growing distance between the Copelands might be tied to some kind of personal issue. Some suggested that their ministry was facing financial troubles, which could have put a strain on their relationship. Others whispered that Gloria had become increasingly distant, possibly due to some internal conflict within their organization. But the most concerning rumors had to do with their faith and marriage. Could it be that their deep commitment to the ministry was starting to overshadow their personal bond? Was there trouble in their spiritual partnership? It wasn't long before the online community was buzzing with speculation. Social media was flooded with fans wondering what was really happening between Kenneth and Gloria. Some argued that every marriage goes through rough patches and that this could just be a temporary issue. Others, however, couldn't help but feel that something more serious was at play. They pointed to the way Kenneth seemed more distracted at events, his usual energy and enthusiasm replaced with a more somber and detached presence. There was even talk of infidelity, something no one wanted to believe, but something the rumors kept suggesting. As time passed, the Copelands' silence about these rumors only fueled the fire. They didn't address the increasing speculation, and that left many fans feeling confused and anxious. Some started to wonder if this was the end of an era. Would the couple who had built so much together now be falling apart? The idea that something could be amiss in the Copelands' seemingly perfect marriage was too much for many fans to process. After all, they had been the face of Christian unity and devotion for so long. The more time went on, the more these whispers and rumors continued to spread, each one more outlandish than the last. Some people claimed that the tension between Kenneth and Gloria was affecting their ministry, leading to cancellations of events and fewer public appearances. It was said that their personal struggles were bleeding into their professional lives, causing disruption within their ministry. This was all speculation, of course. The longer the silence continued, the more the public tried to fill in the gaps with their own assumptions. And as the speculation grew, the once strong image of the Copelands as a perfect Christian power couple began to fracture. In the midst of all this, some fans remained loyal, holding on to the hope that the rumors were just that, rumors. They refused to believe that anything was seriously wrong with the Copelands' marriage. After all, they had been the foundation of so many people's faith for decades. But even the most loyal followers couldn't ignore the signs. The cracks in the facade were becoming more apparent, and with no answers from the Copelands themselves, It seemed like the only thing left was to wait for the truth to come out. It was a night like any other. At least, that's what Kenneth Copeland tried to convince himself. He had spent most of the day working, attending meetings, and keeping up with the demands of his ministry. It was a life he knew well, one filled with the expectation to maintain a perfect public image while navigating the pressures of his career and family. But that evening, something felt different. It wasn't just the usual exhaustion that accompanied his busy schedule. There was an undeniable sense of tension in the air that he couldn't shake. For weeks, he had been noticing the cracks in his relationship with Gloria. First, it was just small things, the way she no longer looked at him with the same warmth, the distance between them at events. But recently, the tension had grown. They had started to spend more time apart, even when they were supposed to be together. He had tried to brush it off, telling himself that they were just going through a rough patch, like any other married couple. But deep down, Kenneth knew something wasn't right. This particular evening, after yet another long day, Kenneth returned home late. His mind was racing, reflecting on the changes in his marriage, the whispers that had begun to grow louder in the back of his mind. As he drove down the familiar road toward their home, he tried to push the thoughts away. He couldn't afford to think about it right now. He had too much to focus on. His ministry, the events coming up, the endless list of responsibility. When he pulled into the driveway, everything seemed calm. The house was dark, except for the soft glow of light coming from the living room. Gloria was usually asleep by the time he came home, but tonight she was still awake. He frowned. It wasn't like her to stay up so late. The sense of unease in his chest grew, but he pushed it aside as he grabbed his bag and made his way to the front door. As soon as he stepped inside, he felt it. The air was thick with an uncomfortable silence. The house, which once felt like a sanctuary filled with warmth and love, now felt cold and unfamiliar. His eyes immediately scanned the living room, but it wasn't until he heard the faint sound of laughter from another room that he froze. It was a soft, intimate laugh, one that didn't belong in their home, not like this. For a moment he stood still, his heart pounding. He didn't want to believe it, but something deep inside him knew. He quietly made his way toward the sound, his footsteps nearly silent on the hardwood floor. The closer he got, the more his mind raced with a million thoughts, none of them good. His heart skipped a beat when he saw them. Gloria, his wife, laughing and wrapped in the arms of another woman. Kenneth's breath caught in his throat. His world seemed to slow down, everything around him blurring as he stood frozen in the doorway. He could hardly believe what he was seeing. This couldn't be happening, not to him, not to them. Gloria, the woman he had shared his life with, the woman who had stood by him through everything, was holding another woman in her arms, in their home. His mind was reeling, unable to process the reality of the situation. The moment felt surreal, as though he had walked into someone else's life, someone else's tragedy. His eyes darted from Gloria's face, which had turned pale at the sight of him, to the other woman, who quickly pulled away with a look of guilt on her face. The room was filled with an awkward, suffocating tension. Kenneth's hands balled into fists at his sides, his body shaking with a mix of disbelief and rage. He wanted to shout, to demand answers, but the words wouldn't come. His chest felt tight, as though the air had been sucked out of the room. All he could hear was the pounding of his heart in his ears. The moment stretched on, filled with a deafening silence. Gloria stood up slowly, her face pale, her lips trembling. "Kenneth," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I never meant for you to find out like this." The words stung more than he could have ever imagined. The woman he had trusted, the one person he thought he could always rely on, had betrayed him. He had seen the signs, he had known something was wrong, but never in his wildest dreams had he expected this. His mind raced as he tried to make sense of what was happening, but nothing made sense anymore. He wanted to scream, to shout, to lash out at her for what she had done, but all he could do was stand there, stunned. "How long?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. It was a question that burned in his throat, a question he didn't want the answer to, but needed to hear. Gloria hesitated, her eyes filling with tears. She opened her mouth to speak, but couldn't find the words. The silence between them was unbearable, a silent admission of guilt hanging in the air. Kenneth took a step back, his mind spinning. He couldn't be in the same room with her, not now, not after this. He turned on his heel and walked out of the house, his heart breaking with every step. The cool night air hit him as he slammed the door behind him, but it did nothing to ease the burning pain in his chest. He needed to get away, to think, to process everything that had just happened. As he drove aimlessly through the night, his mind replayed the moment over and over. He couldn't escape the image of Gloria with another woman, couldn't escape the feeling of betrayal that seemed to consume him. Everything he had built, everything they had built together, seemed to shatter in an instant. The drive felt endless, as though he were lost in a sea of emotions he couldn't control. His thoughts swirled between anger, hurt, and confusion. How had it come to this? How had everything he knew and trusted been turned upside down? And most importantly, what did this mean for him, for his life, for his ministry? The road ahead felt uncertain, just like his future. What would he do now? Would he ever be able to look at her the same way again? Would his ministry survive this? Would his fans understand? Or would they turn on him too? He didn't know the answers to any of those questions. All he knew was that nothing would ever be the same again. His marriage, his life, his future, all of it had changed in an instant. The moment he had just witnessed, the betrayal, would haunt him forever. And as the night stretched on, so did the uncertainty of what was to come. Kenneth sat in his car, staring blankly at the road ahead. The engine was off, but the silence felt deafening. His fingers gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, as his mind replayed the scene he had just walked in on. He hadn't expected this. He never imagined it would come to this moment. Yet there it was. His world turned upside down in an instant. His heart pounded in his chest as emotions he couldn't name overwhelmed him. He wanted to cry, to scream, to do anything but feel this suffocating pain. But instead, he sat motionless, frozen in disbelief. How long had it been happening? He couldn't answer that. His mind refused to accept the reality he had just witnessed. He had walked in on Gloria, his wife, the woman he had stood by for decades, wrapped in the arms of another woman. The sight of it, the betrayal, was like a knife to his heart, twisting with every breath he took. The room had felt smaller as he watched the two of them, the intimacy, the closeness. It all struck him like a blow. It wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't just a momentary lapse. This was something real, something that had been going on behind his back, and he didn't know how to process it. His thoughts were a jumbled mess, conflicting emotions crashing into each other. Anger, hurt, shame, confusion. He couldn't think straight. He had always prided himself on being in control of his emotions, his life. But in that moment, everything felt out of control. He wanted to scream, to shout at Gloria, to demand answers, but the words were stuck in his throat. His body felt heavy, as if the weight of what he had just learned was pulling him down. He wasn't sure how long he had been sitting in the car, lost in his thoughts, but eventually, his hands relaxed their grip on the wheel. The tears, the ones he had been holding back, began to spill down his face. He tried to wipe them away quickly, but they kept coming. He hadn't cried in years, not like this. There was something about betrayal that was more painful than any other grief he had known. He had always believed that his marriage, his faith, would withstand anything, but this shattered him. The thought of confronting her, of walking back into that house and demanding answers, was almost too much to bear. What would he say? How would he even begin to understand? The images of the two of them, laughing together, wrapped in each other's arms, kept replaying in his mind. It was like a movie he couldn't stop watching, no matter how much he wanted to. The scene was etched in his memory, a constant reminder of the trust he had lost. His marriage had always been something sacred, something he had worked hard to protect. For years he had proudly displayed their love for the world to see, presenting themselves as a perfect team, united in their faith, in their family, in everything they did. But now, all of that felt like a lie. How had he missed the signs? Why hadn't he seen it coming? His mind raced with questions, none of which had easy answers. Eventually, Kenneth started the car, the engine rumbling to life, but he couldn't bring himself to move. He didn't know where to go, what to do next. The road ahead seemed unclear, uncertain. His life had always been about faith, about leadership, about presenting an image of strength to his followers. But in this moment, he didn't feel strong. He didn't feel like a leader. He felt broken. The weight of it all was too much to bear, but he knew he couldn't run from it. He couldn't avoid the confrontation that was coming. He had to face this, no matter how painful. With a deep breath, he wiped his eyes one last time and drove back to the house, unsure of what he would find when he walked through the door. When he arrived, the house was still dark, but he could feel the tension in the air. The stillness seemed to mock him, to remind him that everything had changed. His feet felt heavy as he walked inside. Gloria was sitting on the couch, her face pale, her eyes swollen from crying. The other woman was gone, but the damage had been done. The room was filled with the remnants of the moment he had just experienced, the lingering feeling of betrayal hanging in the air. "Ken," Gloria whispered, her voice shaky. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted you to find out like this." Her words, though full of regret, did little to comfort him. How could they? What she had done, what they had done together, was more than just a mistake. It was a breach of trust so deep that it felt like it was ripping him apart. He wanted to yell, to demand answers, but instead, he stood there in silence. His chest felt tight, the anger building up inside him again. But this time, the anger wasn't just directed at her, it was directed at himself. How had he let things get to this point? "Why?" Kenneth finally managed to croak, his voice barely audible. The question hung in the air, heavy with pain. "Why would you do this?" Gloria looked away, unable to meet his gaze. "I don't know. I don't have an excuse. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. It's just, we've been drifting apart for so long. I didn't know how to fix it." Kenneth's mind was spinning. He had always thought they were inseparable, that their bond was unbreakable. He had built everything with Gloria by his side. She had been his partner in every sense of the word, and now it all felt like it was crumbling around him. What had gone wrong? Where had the love, the trust, the faith gone? "I can't do this," Kenneth said, his voice shaking with emotion. The tears had stopped, but the ache in his chest was unbearable. "I don't know what to do anymore." Gloria reached out, but Kenneth stepped back. "I need space. I need time to think." The pain of the moment was too much for him to process all at once. He couldn't bear to stand there and pretend everything was fine. He turned away and walked out of the room, out of the house, into the night. The cool air hit him like a shock, but it didn't numb the pain. Nothing could numb the hurt he felt in his heart. He wasn't sure what the future held. He didn't know if his marriage could survive this, if he could ever look at Gloria the same way again. All he knew was that he had to find a way to heal, to move forward, to find some semblance of peace in the chaos that his life had become. The journey ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: nothing would ever be the same. The pain, the heartbreak, the betrayal, it was all part of the story now, and there was no turning back. Kenneth Copeland sat alone in his study, the quiet of the room making the overwhelming weight of the situation all the more palpable. The events of the past few days felt like they had been part of a bad dream, a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. His entire world had shifted. The betrayal, the pain, the shock. It was all too much. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the image of Gloria with someone else. It was seared into his mind, a constant reminder of what had shattered his life. And now, here he was, sitting in silence, trying to make sense of what came next. The decision had been made, though. He couldn't stay in that house, not with the constant reminders of the life they once had, not with the painful memory of how it had all come crashing down. Something had to change. It wasn't just about his marriage anymore. It was about his peace of mind, his future, and his ability to keep going. He had spent his life preaching about faith, about trusting in God's plan, about love and forgiveness, but now he was left questioning everything. How could he preach about forgiveness when he felt so broken? How could he continue in the spotlight, leading people when his own world was in ruins? Kenneth had always been a man of strong convictions, someone who led by example, who believed that faith and hard work could overcome anything. He had built his empire, his ministry, with Gloria by his side, and now it felt like all of that was slipping through his fingers. His ministry had been his life. It was more than just a career. It was a calling. But with the scandal, with the betrayal, the questions began to swirl. Could he continue as the leader of his ministry? Would people still follow him, still trust him? He had always believed in being transparent, in being open with his congregation. But now the truth felt like a burden he wasn't sure how to carry. The aftermath was chaotic. As soon as the news of the betrayal spread, the media jumped on it. Gossip websites, news outlets, and even social media were flooded with rumors, opinions, and judgments. People from all corners of the world seemed to have something to say about what had happened. Some expressed their sympathy, others their outrage. Some were quick to defend him, claiming that everyone went through tough times, that this was just a phase, that it wasn't the end of his ministry. But there were also those who felt betrayed, who couldn't believe that someone they had trusted for so long could experience such a deep failure. The judgment came from all sides, and it wasn't easy to swallow.